Hi everyone. Tonight we have incredible speaker. It's Bhavik Patel, and tonight we will discuss on product analytics together. Let me introduce Mind the Product quickly. I'm sharing my screens. This is our ProductTank August event. And if you would like to join our event in personally, you could read this QR code and we will know you. What's your job? What is your problems with product analytics in your team? Also, what is your problem that facing every day in your teams? And I think everyone knows Mind the Product. Mind the Product is the largest product community in the world. Mind the Product found in 10 years ago, and ProductTank is subgroup from Mind the Product. And ProductTank is found in more than 200 states, and one of his also our group, ProductTank İstanbul. If you would like to join our groups, you could connect with Slack channels and you could join our paid subscribe accounts. Just open your browser, then write mindtheproduct.com/join, and you could create your account, Mind the Product account. And after creating your Mind the Product accounts, you could catch incredible meetings and fresh contents and our special events, trainings. Just join us. And we have Mind the Product London in this October. You could join us. We will be there. It will be an amazing experience. You should join definitely. And tonight we have Bhavik Patel, and thank for accepting our invitation for tonight. It's a privilege to have you here tonight, and the ball is yours. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Aski. I've not used this before, so are we streaming live? Or are we just recording?
We're on live.
Oh, amazing. I've not used this platform before, so I'm going to try my best. I'm just going to share my screen.
Yeah, here you go.
Yep.
How are you, Bhav? How is London weather? Istanbul is so hot today.
I'm good. I mean, the weather here isn't the same as Istanbul's. It's not terrible. I can't complain. So it's yeah. I'm enjoying it. So I'd say the least. So all good otherwise. How are
Okay.
you guys? This is like first of all, thanks Product Tank folks for welcoming me here. I don't normally speak at product events. I'm usually very much present on the analytics and experimentation and data scene. So this is my first live broadcast like this, and my first broadcast to a predominantly product audience. So I have tried to take out a lot of the like boring data stuff that I have like usually have in.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Bhav, but our attendees say that your voice is getting so low. Can you speak a little bit loudly?
Let me just make sure my settings are okay.
Okay, we could wait. And hi everyone. What is your stage? You could write in chat area, and you can say hi to us. Hi Ceren, Gökay, Lisim, and Orkun.
I think Aski, I'm just going to try and speak up. I think that might be easier. Because,
Okay.
Just in case. Let me know if that doesn't work.
It's good now.
Hopefully that should be okay. So should I just go straight into the presentation or? Yep. Aski's disappeared, so I'm going to just go straight into the presentation mode. Is that right?
Yeah, your presentation
Cool. Okay.
is synced. Okay, I will
Amazing.
be offline and I'm here. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Leslie. So thanks again, everyone. Looking forward to taking you through some of my views on the world of product analytics and product. So I'll just start off a bit about myself. I'm Bhav. So I go by Bhav, but my full name is Bhavik. You can find my ramblings on Twitter. So I'm at Dodo Nerd. So yeah, it's usually just product and data related talk with just some other ramblings. So a bit about myself. So I've worked at a number of different companies. I've been fortunate to have I definitely have a type, which is the companies on the left hand side. They're usually high growth, post startup, early startup, scale up type companies. But I have done my fair share of time in sort of more established companies, so some agencies, publishing side. But I definitely have a preference towards the tech startup scale up companies that you can see on the left hand side. I'm also the founder of a meetup community called Crap Talks, which is a hybrid community made up of analysts, data professionals, data scientists, product people who work in experimentation, designers, UX. It's a very hybrid community, and we usually run talks on anything from experimentation, product management, design, research, data science. So there's usually something in it for everyone. We try and cater each event so that even though we have a diverse group of people watching, there's enough for there's at least one key takeaway for everyone who's taken the time to attend. When I'm not running events or working, I also like to blog in my spare time. So you can find my ramblings again on Medium, so Bhav Patel. And then also I speak at some events. So these are just some events I've spoken to at the past. So this was a Content Square event, an Optimizely event, and then the bottom one is a Crap Talks event that I did. So moving on. So I thought I'd start off with talking about product and why product is more important than ever before. Now, I feel like I'm preaching to the converted, given that most of you probably already know this, so you don't need me telling you about it. But I figured, you know what, in case those of you who don't, I'd take some time to just talk about it before I go into why product analytics is so important. So if you think back not long ago, just a few years, most companies were spending millions on advertising. I think there was even a joke that floats around in the marketing community, which is, I know half of my marketing works, I just don't know which half. And I've always found that to be strange, like why so much investment was going in marketing, when majority of people would come to the website and they'd bounce off somewhere because of the quality of the product. So I've taken the liberty to talk about it through a metaphor, and I quite like this prism metaphor where you've sort of got this light shining downwards at this downwards 30 degrees angle, and that's sort of like where marketing-led growth has historically come from. It probably had some great traction early on in the digital world, but I think definitely the more and more companies who are product-led are starting to realize that you can't keep pumping money into just marketing without having a decent product. And actually, to sort of come out of that, you need to have product-led growth. And actually, but product-led growth is not just one thing. It's not one PM. It's a myriad of things. It's your product managers. It's your UX. You still need marketing. I mean, there's no point building great products if no one's going to come to your website or your product. You need to do research. You need design. You need analytics. I missed out engineering, of course, but there's you get the idea. And actually, growth happens when all of these sort of areas are working harmoniously, and you get this nice rainbow effect. So what is product-led growth? Product-led growth is an end-user-focused growth model that relies on the product itself as the primary driver of customer acquisition, conversion, and expansion. Now, I like that this expression isn't just focusing on growth. It's actually talking about just acquiring customers, converting them, but also expanding on them and retaining them. So actually, maybe retention could have been in this quote. But you sort of start to understand why product is so complex and why it's so important, because you need to first acquire your customers, and that requires an attractive product. It requires easy sign-up flows. It requires and allowing users to try your product. You then need to convert them and get them to stay, and you need to retain them, and then you need to get them to refer you. And suddenly, you realize that you're actually touching so many areas, and the growth isn't just having one good product. It's everything that goes with the product, including the marketing. So I always thought this was important. And you see it more and more, but actually the rise of product organizations sort of looks like this hockey stick, where companies are now, where previously they were probably investing purely in marketing, are starting to heavily invest in product organizations. And that is everything from the CPO right down to a junior designer in the organization. And what's great about this is where previously product sort of had this role, which was just building and shipping products quietly in the background, while marketing had all of this revenue attached to their target, you sort of see this emphasis on product to take ownership of these targets. And it's great, but it also comes with a challenge. So you've got a rise in this product organization. That's led to a rise in the product stack. So this here, you can see a wide range of different tools and technologies that product people use. And when I say product people, I go back to that cross-functional skill set of people who do everything from research to design to analytics. And actually, it wasn't too long ago when we were looking at similar charts like this, which were focusing purely on marketing tech. Some of them carried over, so obviously your business intelligence will carry over regardless. But a lot of this is focused on the user now, and you can see actually that product teams manage a lot of these different areas. So you've got your collaboration on the top left, you've got designing and prototyping, you've got tools for session replay, you've got tools for knowledge base and onboarding. You have your road mapping tools. I think I've lost track of how many roadmaps I've built across different product platforms. Then you've obviously got your task management projects, so traditionally Jira or Asana or something like that. But more and more of these are popping up each day. And actually, the product stack industry in itself is now worth billions, and you see more and more VCs investing in this because they're starting to realize that there is this gap in growing product in growing product organizations where everything from like I said, rising CPOs to right down to the junior product manager or designer. But there is these additional stacks which complement product, and all this investment in product technologies, you sort of forget sometimes that there are other product tools, and actually the people who historically or are predominantly hired right away in product organizations aren't qualified or equipped, no offense, to use these technologies. And when I talk about these technologies, I'm talking about your business intelligence. So probably you've got a business intelligence team in your company anyway, like a BI or a data team. But they also need to understand product in its pure form. There's tag management companies, tag management products. So tools that will funnel traffic data and event data from your website into some data warehouse. There's your product analytics tools, which need to be properly set up so that you guys can all use them and get quantitative insights. You've got your experimentation technologies. Again, setting up and I'll talk about this a bit later, but setting up an experimentation technology is only half the battle. You then need to use it properly. So you need governance around it and what that looks like. So basically, you've got all of these tools that no one currently looks after in product organizations. I don't know, maybe it's because product is still growing so rapidly that a lot of the investment is happening in building the products, in shipping the products, that actually measuring the products is an afterthought. But if it goes, I don't know. For me, it goes back to its fundamental when we think about what product launches are and what product features look like. So there's two core acceptance criteria that you look at when you're launching features. You'd like to think that what you're launching is valuable for the user, and then from a technology perspective, you need to make sure it's bug free. And I use bug free as an encompassing term for good software engineering practices. But there's sort of one more that I always feel like is missing in this, and that's ensuring that everything you do is measurable by design. Because you might think you're building something that's valuable for the customer or the user, but unless you can quantify it, it's just a guess, I guess. So how do I summarize this? I guess the best way to do it is I'm just going to read this verbatim because I feel like it does a better job explaining what I've been talking about. But product leaders have more operating budget to build teams than ever before. They're getting software engineers teams growing, they've got product teams growing, they're getting budget to build to acquire technologies, and they're getting budget to invest in research and user interviews and all of the stuff that previously wasn't allocated to marketing teams. Wasn't allocated to product teams and was historically allocated to marketing teams. But with this level of investment in product, accountability becomes critical, and quantifying the returns is going to be inevitable, right? Like I think when I was previously talking about marketing growth, as you know, you still have to quantify everything, every pound and penny and dollar that you spend through some type of ROI analysis or CPA, where how much are we getting back for every pound we're spending, or how do we drive the lowest cost per acquisition to the point where it's profitable for the company in the long term. Product is no different, right? If companies are going to be spending millions and millions of pounds in investing in building product teams, you know, someone at some point is going to ask you, hey, what am I getting in return for all of this? Because I think it needs to be sustainable, and sustainability only happens when it becomes like a 360 engine, where, you know, money you're pumping in is returning a higher return than the initial investment from leadership teams and exec teams. And product analytics is how you do it. So I started off this section talking about why product is so important, and it's more important than ever before. That it only naturally makes sense that actually product analytics is going to be more important than ever before as well. Because you need to quantify every pound, you need to quantify every feature launch. There's also other things I haven't talked about, but how do you ensure that product managers aren't constantly adding features to the website to satisfy their ego, and actually what they're adding to the website is adding value and not just creating feature bloat. And I don't think product managers often think about this, because they feel like they've done some qualitative research with a handful of users, but they haven't actually stress tested it on 100,000 people. So product analytics is how you go about doing it, and actually that's why it's so important, and more important than ever before. So what is product analytics? I mean, if it wasn't obvious from what I've spoken about at a high level, maybe going in a bit more detail might help everyone understand what product analytics is. So I'll start off with the analyst. Most people, when they think about analytics, or they think about analysts or data people, they think of something like this: some nerd sat in front of a spreadsheet, usually headphones on, not talking to anyone. And you wouldn't be wrong. I think historically, companies have probably had data working in silos. But actually, a lot of the great product organizations who do data well probably don't think of analysts like this. When I think about product analytics, and this is going to be my favorite slide today, is this is what I think about when I think about product analytics. It doesn't mean anything. I wanted something that was impactful, and I think the point around this one is that product analysts aren't your run-of-the-mill analysts, and actually a lot of them think about product in the same way as you do, with the exception that they also come with a myriad of sort of like product analytics and experimentation and data skills. So what is product analytics? What do they try to do? Well, we try to understand how customers engage with digital products or services. We put customers at the core of the business by looking at behavioral data. We allow product teams to gain insights, make data-driven decisions, and create meaningful experiences for customers. We track users' digital footprint step by step to see what they like, dislike, what leads them to engage, return, or churn. And we use things like experimentation methods to understand the impact of new product releases. So it's quite a diverse set of skills, and I thought I'd compare it. I'd take a moment to explain how it compares against other product analytics. Other analytics skill sets. Now, this isn't a black and white. One does the left-hand side and the other does the right-hand side. Actually, most analysts will sit on a range, but I feel like this slide helps capture the difference between product analytics, and I'll go through it and explain where possible what I mean. So, the orange dots are your product analysts, and your green dots are your other analysts. So, I guess starting with the top row, so you can be data informed or you can be data driven. I think most BI or data analytics team will create a situation where you are data informed and you understand what's happening and the health of the company. Product analytics really helps drive decisions, and you're taking a data driven approach to make decisions in your product releases, your product features, things like that. Uh, Other analytics functions will probably focus on metrics. Product analytics is very much focused on the users. Like it's just like how designers, researchers, and PMs think about the product from a user perspective and their pain points. Product analysts are doing exactly the same thing. The data we work with is probably more subjective than objective. What do I mean by that? It's when we talk about like objective data, it's revenue, sales. It's very clear when it's good, when it's bad. But actually, subjective data is sort of like, well, scroll depth is that, what does good scroll depth look like? What does a good bounce rate look like? It's very subjective. There's no good or bad, right? Explicit versus implicit data. So BI analysts or data analysts will traditionally work with very explicit data sets. They're very black and white. These are your sales, your revenues, your orders. Product analysts will work with more implicit data sets. So we might even work with like user feedback. We might work with user research set teams. We'll work with design teams in one-to-one interviews, and we'll try and take some implicit data as well as the explicit data and build an overarching picture. Product analysts will focus on analyzing data instead of just reporting it. We'll try and be more proactive than reactive. Data teams, again, this one starts to be a bit more in the middle because I think a good data person will challenge with data, but I think more often than not, they'll usually support with data. Correlation, causation, this is very much on the opposite ends of the spectrum. Data analysts will look for correlations in data. Product analysts will help you understand the causation of a feature or something like that by the use of experimentation. Data analysts will focus on concluding what the data says. Product analysts will focus on recommending some next steps, like what we should be doing next. The next one's a bit obvious, but product analysts will lean more towards a product mindset instead of a business mindset. Maybe I should say user mindset. I don't know. But definitely, most of us will have a very strong understanding of what drives the organization. And finally, the types of data we work with are going to be quite definitive versus directional. So definitive data is like it's accurate. We know it's 100% correct. Not always, but majority of the time, data analysts will work with good, clean data sets. Product analytics works with very directional data. So we probably wouldn't take something like total sessions or users on the site and assume that it's 100% accurate, because we deal with things like ITP protocols, so where we've got cookie tracking blocked, we've got users who don't want to be tracked. Maybe we haven't implemented front-end tracking properly. So we very much use that data to be in the directional sense. The role of the product analyst is to understand the customer, quantify the user experience, identify core and proxy metrics, build a measurement plan, find opportunities, design experiments, communicate clearly, aid decision-making and discovery, make recommendations, steer roadmaps, support in setting OKRs, and above all else, prove growth through product. So, a lot of these things you look at, you think actually this is reflective of a product manager, and you wouldn't be wrong, right? I think a lot of this stuff a lot of these skill sets do sit within product teams, through user research, through design, through product, whoever it is. But my point is that product analyst is very much an arm of a product function. So how can product analytics help ship better products? I promise I haven't got too many more slides. I'd rather spend more time doing Q&A. But well, first and foremost, by helping you ask the right questions. I can't tell you the amount of times I get asked a question from a product person, and the question isn't really what they want to know, is what they think they want to know. So I've just put down a few examples, like what is our retention rate? I get asked this so much, or what is our churn rate? Actually, the question you should be asking is what drives retention, what drives churn, and try to do analysis and causal studies to say, actually, how do we increase these? And sure, knowing it is important, but actually understanding what drives this, it's critical. How many people click on this? That's a horrible question, because you've got no measure of comparison, and there's no way to understand if it's growing or getting worse. So a better question might be, what is our click-through rate? How far do people scroll? Is that important? Actually, the question should be, is scroll depth important? So you start to understand, actually, when you move away from these metric-led questions to these user-led questions, and I think despite product people being great at putting themselves in the shoes of the user and understanding their pain points, they're not very good at asking the right questions when it comes to trying to understand those users. And this is, again, where product analytics is so critical. So work with your product analytics team if you have one, and help them help you understand the problem and not just get the data. They'll help you define metrics. This is a very crap slide. I apologize. I actually didn't want to go into depth of it because there is an article someone in my team wrote which is much better and does a great job of helping define metrics, because I feel like this could be an entire presentation in itself. But in short, a good metric should be actionable. So can you take action from it? Something like how many followers do we have is not an actionable metric. Something like what is our click-through rate or what is our bounce rate, that's an actionable metric because you can see it go up and down and you can take action off the back of it. Metrics should be comparable. When we talk about how many users, how many users engage with our chat feature, that's not really comparable as a metric. It should maybe be what percentage of users engage with our chat feature, because then you can compare it regardless of the volumes, because you will have seasonality. You can use it over the course of you can use that same metric to understand how that feature is doing over the course of a year. Metrics should be understandable. I won't go into too much detail on that, but basically everyone should have a clear understanding of what the metric is and how it's calculated and how it's measured. And we're really talking about definitions here and agreed definitions. It should be relevant. If you're running an experiment, say for example on the homepage, the metric you're measuring probably shouldn't be checkout conversion, which is maybe 10 steps removed. You need to find a metric that's closer and relevant at the place where you're measuring. They should be measurable. I think this one goes without saying. Don't launch features unless you can measure them. And finally, they should be reliable. So when you're thinking about your metrics, think about, are they prone to biases? Are we likely to lose them? Have we had challenges and issues with data over the course of the last 6 to 12 months? So really think about some of these things when you're defining your metric. So I know I talked a bit about metrics, but I do want to spend maybe a few minutes talking about choosing metrics for product growth. And actually, again, this is an area that I could spend an entire talk about, and I don't want to go into it in much detail because I have written blog posts about this, and you can go in and have a read about them yourselves. But one of the things I like doing is I like working with product teams to help them identify what their metrics should be, and I use something called a metric tree or a unit economic tree to define that. And this is just an example, but say for most companies, revenue is going to be the primary driver of their business, and then we think about, okay, well, what is revenue made up of? Well, revenue is orders times average order value, and you keep going further and further down. The top part of the pyramid or tree will be very much your core commercial metrics. And actually, the further down you get, the fuzzier it becomes. But this is where product sits. This is where your metrics sit, because you can't really influence orders or average order value directly. You can only influence how users interact with your product and the things and their decision-making process. So the further down you go, so say for example, if I look at orders, that number of customers times purchase frequency. Well, number of customers is visits times your conversion rate, and purchase frequency is how good a job your CRM team potentially does at getting users to come back on a more frequent basis. Visits are your impressions times your click-through rate, and the really tricky one is your conversion rate. So your conversion rate is probably going to be something like 1 minus your bounce rate times your step 1 completion rate times your step 2 completion rate times your step n completion rate times your basket rate times your cart completion rate. And actually, what you do is the further down you go into these, you can start breaking down, well, okay, what drives users to add to basket? And now what you can do is actually, when you start moving some of these metrics at the bottom, you can see how they ladder up to your commercial metrics. And actually, I think this is where it becomes really powerful for product to be able to think about their product in sort of this way. I've done an example here from a previous company. So a mailbox subscription service, obviously we want to drive revenue. Revenue, again, is for this company was orders times AOV. Orders is existing customers who have ordered times their order frequency. The existing customers have ordered, they have to have seen the menu, and they have to have converted. So the conversion is how many users saw the menu, times how many users browsed the recipe, times how many users added at least 2 recipes to the basket, and then times how many users clicked save. So this now you can see actually by increasing the percentage of users who browse recipes, you can very loosely start to see how it ladders up this metric tree to drive revenue. And these are the types of metrics you want to start moving to be able to then say, actually, this is how we drive revenue upwards. So that's a short section on metrics. The next thing that product analytics can help with is experimentation process. Now, I can't see anyone here, so I would like to have done a show of hands. But I would have asked, like, how many of you think this is what a good experiment design process looks like? And I think most of you would have put your hands up and said yes, and thought, actually, well, we can do this. This is a terrible example of an experimentation process, because actually it leaves out a lot of core steps, and they are, well, you've set your goal and you've decided what to test, but actually you need to quantify it first, because what's the point in testing something that's going to add, like a fraction of a percent to your overall bottom line? Once you've decided what to test, you need to write better hypotheses. Hypotheses are the foundations upon which experiments are built. They'll keep you on the straight and narrow and ensure you're not shoehorning results into some, just because you want the result to be good. Then you need to define KPIs. Now, again, I talked about running an experiment on the homepage and measuring the outcome on the checkout page. Probably you're not going to see the impact you want to see, and your experiment's going to have to run a very long time. Then you've got you create your variations, but you need to determine the test design. So actually, what are we going to do if the test is a winner? What are we going to do if it's flat? What are we going to do if it loses? What are the guardrail metrics that we're going to measure? How do we ensure that actually we're not hurting something somewhere else? Do we have tracking in place? Are we going to be able to measure these experiments? Then you sort of move along before you run the test to decide how long you're going to run the test for. Most people don't have a clue how long to run the test for. The amount of times I ask analysts when I'm interviewing, how long would you run an experiment for? They'd be like, oh, we'd probably let it run for a week. Why? And you need to be able to understand and answer these questions. Then you put your test live, but then you need to monitor the test as well before you analyze your results. You just need to monitor it, make sure that it's working appropriately. You don't want to spend 3 weeks running an experiment just to find out your data is shit, right? Sorry, excuse my language. Then you analyze the results, and I never trust product people to analyze results, because they're too emotionally invested in the experiment to the point where they're going to introduce all sorts of bias. So the analysts will be removing bias in the design, in how they interpret results, all sorts. They need to make recommendations on what we should do next. And finally, you come back and you repeat the process all over again. So you start to see how actually product analytics can really help drive product roadmap, product decision making, feature launches, and things like that. So, in short, I guess what I'm trying to say is, when thinking about product, think about how you're going to measure it, right? Think product analytics, think experimentation. You might think that a lot of this stuff is straightforward, but actually there's nuances in it which you probably wouldn't have even considered. So it's definitely worth investing in product analytics. I'm sorry I haven't gone into more details onto like how you can set up sessions to run your own metrics measurement framework sessions on, or building a backlog of ideas, test ideas, or doing calculations on sample sizes and things like that. A lot of it I have written about in blog posts, so if you do want more details, you can find my Medium blog post and just have a read through some of it. But hopefully this gives you an idea as to why product analytics at this moment now is more important than ever before, and that's the main reason is because product is more important now than it was ever before. So thank you so much for your time. I'm open to any questions. I hope that was useful. And I'll stop sharing.
Thanks for your incredible slides. It helps for everyone. You have such an incredible slides about product analytics, how we could create the architecture, and what is our behaviors on user experience. Thanks for all of this.
I actually had a slide on like proper product analytics, tech stacks and architectures, but I thought it was a really dry slide and no one would appreciate it. And actually every company's tech stack is going to be different, so there's really no point. But if anyone does want to talk tech stacks afterwards, I'm more than happy to have a discussion.
Yeah, I see. I agree with you. Is anyone want to ask question? Maybe about choosing true metrics slides.
I can see comments.
Choosing metrics for product growth slides, or how do you identify core metrics by domain, such as fintech, such as e-commerce, such as data science? Is anyone interested in? Okay, I can ask you, Bhav. I know that you have many various experiences, such as malls, such as e-commerce. How do you create core metrics when you enter the company? How do you choose true metrics or discover the true metrics by domains?
Um, I think it varies. A lot of the because each product function will have a different area they look after, right? So
Mhm.
I guess for if if you're working on an e-commerce site and your area is I don't know the product category pages, um, I would look to understand like what is it that you can influence on the product category pages and how that drives sort of upstream benefits. So I mean that's a poor example, but effectively, product category pages are designed to help users pick products as quickly and as efficiently as possible, get them added to their basket so they can move on, right? So I don't know. I guess it would vary depending on the different area you'd be working on.
Yeah, it's a long answer. Maybe the next live stream you could answer more details.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a main topic, cause
Oh, I mean,
and
I mean, we can go into more detail, but it's. I think it's better. I think identifying product metrics is very much a workshop type of question. You want to understand because ideally, what you want to do is you want to have the people who have deep domain level expertise in the product space they're working in into a room, and between like five, six, seven of you, whoever, you want to say, well, what are the options that we want to think about, and how do we think that drives some behavior. And then what you can do is you can take all of those and you can provide them, pass them on to a data scientist or a product analyst who can do some type of analysis to say actually how much do those features actually drive what you care about. Um, and then I think from that point onwards, you can take it from there. I've recently been reading about North Star metrics, and I think North Star metrics is I think it's a terrible term. I don't like the term North Star metric because most people who look up into the sky can't even identify the North Star, right? So why call it a North Star metric? But the point around it is that if you think about some of the great North Star metrics out there, you've got the likes of Airbnb, and their North Star metric is something I can't. I've got it written down somewhere, but it's increasing the number of days a user stays, right?
right.
In a room because that benefits the user, it benefits the host, and ultimately benefits Airbnb, right? So it's a really great metric. For Netflix in the early days, before they became the conglomerate they are now, their
Mhm.
North Star metric was getting users to reserve 3 titles. So when this was back in the days when you had to order DVDs off the internet, but
Mhm.
their North Star was how do we get users who have 3 titles in their backlog reserved are more likely to be retained. So they worked on how do we just basically get users to add DVDs into their backlog, reserve them, and they have 3 reservations, and that was their North Star metric. So I don't know. I feel like for each company it's going to be very different, and understanding the North Star metric is critical.
Yeah, I know Netflix story. It's interesting. And Besim asked, how do you drive qualitative user research?
What do I qualitative user research? So actually, my previous company, we worked with the user research team. So it was very much a two-way relationship. So the user research team would go and do sort of like so user research is they're gonna have expertise in their field. They're gonna understand psychology. They're gonna understand demographic studies. They're gonna understand all of those types of things.
Mhm.
And working with product analytics, what we were able to do is we were able to like amplify any insights they got to see if actually there was value there. And on the flip side, product analytics did the same thing. We would go and do some exploratory and quantitative data analysis, and we found that actually there was something that was happening that was quite obscure, and we understood the what, we just didn't understand the why. So we'd work with the research team to go and then explain that, go and do user research, and actually what happened as a result of working in this sort of like symbiotic relationship between product analytics and research and design and UX, our win rate for experiments went up from something like 10% to nearly 40% because when we were working in isolation, there was some additive impact from product analytics, additive impact from user research. But actually, by bringing them together, the impact was multiplied, and we saw a significantly higher. So I don't know if that answers the questions. How do you employ or drive qualitative user research? I would say, like product analytics, qualitative research is another critical part of product development, in my opinion. Anyway, I don't feel like product analytics should be on driving it. It should be on people to recognize that there is a skill set missing and to then add it. There's a question above which I really like. You said product people are too emotionally invested in the product to do the analysis. How do you communicate to them things that they won't like? It's not easy. I often ran into this situation with PMs at previous companies where they were doing things and not recognizing the biases in their own sort of work, and I think it took a week to get our head of product, one of the PMs, to realize that actually the way they wanted to run an experiment was riddled with bias, and they were like, "Oh no, this doesn't make a difference." But actually, what they weren't considering was, so what we were trying to swap core ingredients of a recipe. So replace meat with a meat-free alternative. And they were like, well, we can arbitrarily pick a burger and replace that, and we'll keep the spaghetti bolognese as our control group, and we won't change that. But actually, what they failed to realize is that there is a bias in that some people, if they're going to eat a double cheeseburger, they probably don't want to replace the meat with a healthy alternative. But if they're having something that's a little bit healthier, they're more likely to change the meat for a lean meat or a vegan alternative. And there is bias in just the selection of the product. And actually, it's by having that sort of like critical thought process, saying, actually, you know what, we haven't considered the fact that there are differences and nuances in our product that we need to account for. And this is where sometimes you're emotionally too invested. Even with like experiments. Experiments is my favorite one. Working with designers, I remember when I first joined early on the company, the guys ran an experiment which failed on the primary metric, but then I would have the research team messaging me saying, hey, what about this metric? Hey, what about this metric? Hey, what about this metric? It's like, it hasn't won. Why are you trying to squeeze this result? If those metrics were important, you would have considered them in the experiment brief right at the beginning. And I think sometimes it just requires someone to be like emotionally uninvested. And I always like joking about this. I usually have a slide with Kristen Stewart, who has like a completely neutral face, to explain it. But I think that when you are so close to the product and you spent weeks and months in development and in sessions and design and user research, that actually you don't want to hear that it's not working well. And this is where sometimes you need someone like an analytics team who are invested in the customer experience, but not in each individual idea that the product manager has. If that makes sense. So I hope that helps, Ab.
Yeah, thanks, Bhav, for your answer. And I would like to back Besim's question. You mean that quality research is important with the product analytics team? Is there any tool that you are using for surveys, interviews? Is there any all-in-one tool that you experienced before?
I mean, we can go up through my slides to see what they. I don't know what the research teams use. I think they'll use a combination of things like Hotjar. They'll do user replay sessions. They'll do one-to-one feedbacks. But I couldn't tell you. I don't claim to be a user researcher.
Okay, there are many tools.
Yeah, I'm sure there's loads of them.
Drive for this. That's why I'm asking it, because you have board for user interviews, you have roadmap for UX research. Is there? Yeah, okay.
I mean, I think
I got you.
I don't know. Maybe and I don't mean to speak for the user research community, but for me, I wouldn't like using a tool that asks. So you get some of these tools where people are paid to review your product and they talk through what they're doing. I don't like those tools. I feel like it's a really artificial environment, and actually the best people to give you feedback on your product are your customers. So I would much prefer to listen to a customer service call. I would much rather read feedback on our social media than to have a tool. I would much rather do an email blast of segments of users within our user base to say, hey guys, we want to put together like a focus group on our product, or people who really understand our product, and do that, then have some third party tool where someone's getting paid to just click around and try and accomplish some task. I don't like artificial situations like that. So I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, product budgets will be crazy if we are using each tools. I agree with you. And Gökay answered the questions. Dovetail can be an option for UX interview. Thanks, Gökay. I'm also using Figma for alignments all teams and Zoom for user interviews. It's enough for sometimes. And thanks for all answers. And we have, this is my latest questions about books and articles. Which book or articles could you advise for us?
Depends on what you want to know.
Also about product analytics.
Oh, I see. So it's a relatively new field actually. There isn't too much out there. So I think it depends on which arm of product analytics you want to understand. If you want to understand experimentation, then there are some good blogs out there. And again, it comes down to where on the spectrum you want to be. Do you want to be like, actually, I just need to understand where product analytics works? How experimentation works at a very high level. Or there's, can you tell me exactly how the statistical analysis is done to analyze the test results, and what does it mean when you've got p-values and confidence intervals and like all of those types of things. So it depends on where you want to be on the spectrum. But I think I don't know if there's a way to maybe I can share some articles on Twitter later on today if anyone if
you can comment after this event. You can comment on this link, and our attendees can catch your favorite books and articles. Also, maybe Christina Vodka's book is good for OKRs.
OKRs? Oh, I have a book for OKRs. It's called Radical Focus.
Radical Focus, yeah, definitely what I mean.
That's the only book I've read on OKRs, and it changed my life. I've realized that I've been doing OKRs wrong for so long. Read Radical Focus. I forgot who the author is, but it's a really, really good book to help you think about OKRs. And I've certainly changed the way I do OKRs over the last 2 years as a result of it.
And maybe Steve Jobs, when you add your favorite product analytics.
Well, there you go, right? So no, I mean I'm a big fan of Steve Jobs as well. So
yeah,
I have to have that picture.
Thanks for your effort. Thanks for your time. Yeah, it's such an amazing event. Thanks for everything.
No, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. Like I said, if anyone has any further questions, just reach out on LinkedIn or Twitter or something. Then, I'm happy to have the conversations afterwards.
Yeah. See you.
Cheers.
Maybe the next event. See you.
Cheers,
have a nice time.
Thanks.